Welcome back, everybody. We are up to lesson 7, and today we're going to look at a specific situation involving x-intercepts and polynomials. So what we're going to look at is if we are told what the x-intercepts are of a polynomial, how can we figure out a possible polynomial that has those given x-intercepts? So again, if we are given an x-intercept or a number of x-intercepts for a polynomial, how can we generate a polynomial that has those given x-intercepts? And the way we're going to do that is what it says right here. We're going to convert each x-intercept to a factor by switching the sign. So if there are two x-intercepts, they're going to be two factors. If there are three x-intercepts, they're going to be three factors, so on and so forth. So this is what I mean by switching the sign. So if I had an x-intercept of -1, that is negative, I would switch it to positive, and the factor, the corresponding factor, would be x plus 1. If my x-intercept were positive, so in this case positive 3, I would switch that to a -3 and make the factor x minus 3. If my x-intercept were simply 0, then my factor would just be x. It would be x minus 0, technically, but we don't need to write that. And lastly, if I have a fraction, so let's say my fraction is 1/2, that is my x-intercept, then I change it to a negative, make it x minus 1/2. And then what I do is I take whatever the denominator of the fraction is, in this case the denominator was 2 since it's 1/2, and I multiply both terms of that by 2. So 2 times x is 2x, and 2 times -1/2 is -1. So I have to do an extra step when I have an x-intercept that's a fraction. I do the switching the sign trick, but then I have to multiply everything in that factor by the specific denominator. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and take a look at the two examples I have here. Write a polynomial in factored and standard form whose x-intercepts are the following. So number 1, we have an x-intercept of 10, -2, and +9. So there are 3 x-intercepts, which means there are going to be 3 factors. So I'm going to make +10 into a factor by switching the 10 to -10. So the factor will be x minus 10. And then I'll do the same thing with -2, except I'll make that into x plus 2. Switch the sign from negative to positive. And then the last one, I'll change 9 into a factor by making it -9, so x minus 9. So this right here, it says to write the polynomial in factored and standard form. This right here is the factored form. So now to convert it to standard form, I have to do the box method. So remember, when I'm multiplying 3 together, I'm going to multiply any 2 of them together and then take that answer and multiply that by the third one. So I'm going to create a 2 by 2 box. Okay, and I'll put x minus 10 up here, and I'll put x plus 2 over here. So I'm going to multiply the first 2. So again, I'll do x times x to get that first one. So x times x is going to be x squared. This bottom left one is going to be 2 times x. So 2 times x is 2x. This one right here is going to be -10 times x. So -10 times x is -10 10x. This one right here is going to be 2 times negative 10. So 2 times negative 10 is negative 20. So my answer is going to be x squared, starting in the top left corner. And then my like terms, I have a negative 10 and a positive 2x. So a negative 10 and a positive 2 becomes a negative 8x, and then minus 20. So when I multiply the first two together, I get x squared minus 8x plus 20. So now I'm going to take that, x squared minus 8x plus 20, and I'm going to multiply that by the third factor, which was x minus 9. So now I'm going to do a 3 by 2 box, since I have a trinomial and a binomial. So this will be x squared minus 8x plus 20, and this will be x minus 9. And let's go ahead and multiply this together. So x squared times x to the first is going to be x cubed. Negative 9 times x squared, that's going to be negative 9x squared. Negative 8x times x, negative 8x times x is going to be negative 8x squared. Negative 9 times negative 8x. Negative 9 times negative 8x. So that's a negative times a negative. So that's going to be a positive 72x. Negative 9 times negative 8 is positive 72. Third row, we have 20 times x. So 20 times x is 20x. And then the last one is 20 times negative 9. So 20 times negative 9, you may need to use a calculator to double check. If you have to, you have to. There's no shame in doing that. 20 times negative 9 is negative 180. And let's put this together. So we have x cubed. Then I have negative 9 and negative 8x squared. So that's going to be a negative 17x squared. Then I have 72x and 20x. That's going to be 92x. And then minus 180. So x cubed minus 17x squared plus 92x minus 180. This is the standard form. So remember, the question said, write a polynomial in factored and standard form. Well, I've done that. I have the factored form over here, and then over here I have the standard form. So that's it for number one. Number two, we're going to do the exact same thing that we just did. So I'm going to take I'm going to take 7, and I'm going to change it to a negative 7. So my factor will be x minus 7. I'm going to do the same thing with 1. So the factor will be x minus 1. And then this goes back to what I talked about before. I'm going to take negative 1/4, and I'm going to initially change it to a positive 1/4. So it becomes x plus 1/4. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the denominator. In this case, the denominator is 4. And I'm going to multiply each of the terms in this factor by 4. So 4 times x is going to be 4x. 4 times 1/4 is going to be 1. So the factor becomes 4x plus 1. So my three factors are x minus 7, x minus 1, and 4x plus 1. This is the factored form. Okay. So let's go ahead and multiply that out. So I'll start off with a 2 by 2 box like I did before. So I'll do x minus 7 and x minus 1. So top left is going to be x times x. So that's going to be x squared. Bottom left is going to be negative 1 times x. That's going to be a negative 1x. This one's going to be negative 7 times x. So that's going to be a negative 7x. And this one is going to be a negative 1 times a negative 7. So that's a positive 7. So if I put that together, I get x squared, negative 7 and a negative 1x. Negative 7 and negative 1x becomes negative 8x. And then plus 7. And now I'm going to take that and I'm going to multiply that by 4x plus 1. So now let's do a 3 by 2 box. So we have x squared minus 8x plus 7. And I have 4x plus 1. And let's fill that in. So x squared times 4x, or 4x times x squared, that's going to be a 4x cubed. Negative 8x times 4x, so that will be a negative 32x squared. 7 times 4x, that's going to be 28x. Okay. Second column, x squared times 1. Well, anything times 1 is itself, so x squared times 1 is x squared. Negative 8x times 1 is negative 8x. And 7 times 1 is obviously 7. So if I put that together, I end up with 4x cubed, negative 32 and a positive 1x squared. That's going to be a negative 31x squared. 28x and negative 8x becomes positive 20x. Right? 28 plus negative 8 is 20x plus 7. So my standard form is 4x cubed minus 31x squared plus 20x plus 7. So I have my factored form and my standard form, and I am done. That is it for this lesson.